You're listening to Music Tectonics.
Welcome back to Music Tectonics, where we go beneath the surface of music and tech. I'm your host, Dimitri Vitsa. I'm also the CEO and founder of Rock, Paper, Scissors, a music tech PR firm. And we've got a special Music Tectonics for you today. It's a recording from one of our weekly Wednesday gatherings. We've been doing those ever since Friday the 13th in March, when South by Southwest was canceled, and we wanted to create opportunities for networking and learning and continuing the types of stuff we do at live music industry events and do them online. And so every Wednesday, pretty much every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern, we do these events. And last week we had an incredible event that was sort of a spin-off of the Show Must Be Paused demonstration online, the Blackout Tuesday, all the things that have been happening in response to the murder of George Floyd, and thinking about what could all of us do in response to fighting racism, seeing that George Floyd's murder is really, and just police brutality is the tip of the iceberg when it comes to racism. And when you look at systemic racism and its impact on music and tech, there's lots of things we can talk about. So last week on Weekly Wednesday, we did a session called Black Boxes Are Not Enough, a reference to the fact that a lot of people did recognize what was happening in the world and show their protest against racism, against black people, against police brutality by posting a black box on their Instagram or other social media. But we wanted to get a little deeper in the conversation. So we invited three amazing guests for a panel, did less networking than we normally do on Wednesday, but did have Q&A. I bring you this recording from Weekly Wednesday. Black Boxes Are Not Enough. What we can do before and after George Floyd in the music tech space. So check it out. Hope you enjoy.
Thank you, Dimitri. Um, well, that's a huge question. It deserves a huge answer, but I try to bring it in my perspective, what I've seen and observed in a historical fashion. If you think about just the music industry overall, all their wealth and all their growth is because of black music, black artists. If you think about it, all these labels making money. I mean, hip hop kind of helped set these labels on a nice path of wealth, and there's but as far as giving back and all the contracts over the years, people have been complaining about the artists have not been compensated fairly for that stuff. So you look at it on the music industry as a history of right there. Then you go into the tech side, you hear the stories of Facebook, Google's, and all these companies showing their reports of diversity, and it hasn't changed since the inception of their companies, right? You have less than 1%, or the black employees are there are leaving or are upset because they see the race. Riot Games, even though they had a great initiative, like we're going to do $2 million in community, but they already had an issue with a executive vice president saying racist comments, right? So the industry is, tech industry is saying and doing the right things, but right now internally, they haven't really done anything to change the narrative in this issue. And another good example I like to bring up, I brought with you before, is SoundCloud. Like SoundCloud success is owed to hip hop, black artists, right? I don't think SoundCloud would be here if black artists did not adopt that platform, right? Black Twitter, all these platforms. There's been a study saying that black consumers, black people consume more tech than any other group, but when it comes to representation on the other side, they're not there. So that is the I guess the biggest issue for me when it comes to this conversation. Yeah, because at the end of the day, they're making products that people that look like me use, and sometimes they don't really consider people like me in their product decisions, right? And it's not just having employees, but having leaders, having investors, having people really input on these tech products that are being used mostly a lot of people by black people. So that to me is where the issue with me in this space is the problem.
I mean, it's all interconnected. And, at the end of the day, the art and music, as Tariq had mentioned before, come from such a diverse group of people, and specifically, Black people. And when I am navigating through the tech world and we're looking for different music to put here and there, it's interesting how in video games we see all the Black music, Black dances, and these artists aren't getting credit for it, or we don't know where some of these things come from, but these companies are benefiting from the eyes, the energy, the fun that has been created by these artists. So it's been very important to me to just understand these industries comprehensively, so I can navigate where the breakdowns are and where the opportunities are for different people that are often overlooked in this space. So I mean, there's so much to talk about here. It's a huge conversation, but just seeing it from a different angle, there's still the same sorts of issues that plague this space. An example of this, a really quick, easy example of this is Fortnite. A lot of these young players get to play Fortnite, and you see the avatar that the player uses doing black dances that are absolutely coming from black musicians, black artists on YouTube, right? And Fortnite and Epic are gajillion-dollar companies. They make massive profits, and they can't take a moment to give acknowledge and credit to the people that they're taking these ideas from. And after probably Fortnite had been out for quite some time and they had like many complaints, instead of like really supporting black artists, they just stopped taking those dances and that music. And but as we're moving forward, we see the Travis Scott concert in the same sort of area, but like video games can be a platform that's right, because you're not necessarily looking to listen to music, you're looking to engage in an experience. So if black artists, black musicians are acknowledged and used more in that space, that could really sort of set an additional opportunity for exposure for people's creativity. So but like Fortnite is a huge one because it just gets so many views. You think of it as a video game, but it really is a virtual space that people are engaging in heavily in a way that we haven't, that's pretty unprecedented. And we are really, really paying attention now that we're living in a pandemic and we can't go to concerts and we can't, do all the fun things that we normally do to enjoy music and concerts. So like we're doing it inside of games, and it's really interesting like who really benefits from this whole sort of process. It's virtual spaces and video games again just really can set the tone of how we're moving forward and giving opportunities to people of color and making this a more equitable sort of space. But it's again huge conversation to have. Can we start there? I mean, it's infuriating and enraging that that is like a minimal ask. Like can we start there? The way that people consume music is so much different than it was. Like we're not buying CDs, we're not really paying for downloads, we're experiencing and exploring new music through apps like Pandora or Spotify. So to get discovered is really important right now, to get exposure, to get acknowledgement, to get, any sort of spotlight put on you in a way that's memorable is imperative for new artists. So, it's enraging that acknowledgement and credit is difficult for these massive companies.
I'm good, man. Just responding to text messages. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, like right now, because of all of the things that are going on in the world, my focus is to make sure that this next generation of youth is represented. They're doing a great job of representing themselves out with the marches and the protests and things like that. And then you see the big companies, throwing the dollars at this. And some are doing it for just causes. Some are doing it just to tick the box and go, look what we did. We just gave $100 million to Black Lives Matter, not understanding what the money's going to do. So my goal is to make sure that during this time of awakening, that all the money that's being spent, all of the resources that are now attainable that were never attainable for people of color, we've got to make sure that it's done the right way instead of this everybody jumping on the bandwagon right now and then a few months later people forget and go back. I'm like telling companies, like, if you're on this train and the train is moving at 1,000 miles an hour and you can't jump off, because if you jump off, you're going to die this time. Before you were able to jump on and jump off at the next stop and pat yourself on the back. But, now you got to be on for the long haul. Yeah, there's a lot missing, because if you really, really think about it, one of the biggest issues, and you mentioned earlier about education, is the fact that we as a Black race aren't even educated on what the jobs are out there that we can apply for or go for, because they just don't even think about it. So it's not like we even know. And the schools don't teach it. The parents don't teach it. And even in the gaming space, think about the gaming space. There's over 100 jobs in gaming. And we don't know, unless somebody comes out and says, hey, you can go be a game tester. You can go in esports and be a shoutcaster. There's so many, you can be a producer. You can do music for games. There's so many things to do, but no one knows how to get in. So that's one thing, is education. The second thing I think that's very, very important, getting back to kind of the weirdness, and it's almost we're at fault to a little bit of a degree, because when I talk to companies, there are companies that look to me as like an idea guy, like, okay, so how do we go about this? Who can we use for this? And I'm like, oh, you should go get this guy right here. This is the best guy for your company for what you need. And they first thing they do, and I can tell, is they look at what the person looks like. Now, this could even be a Black company. A Black company could look at, some guy who's overqualified in hip hop that can go help run your company and take it to $1 billion company, but they would rather go get a guy that's wearing a suit and tie, because that looks more like a CEO. But the guy knows nothing about what you guys want. But because he went to college and he has a tie, you're going to hire him and have him run the company instead of the guy who's overly qualified, get past the look, get past how they dress, get past even how they act, as long as they can get the job done. So we got to just wipe all the racism out, wipe out all the stereotypes, and really get to the fundamental thing of what people can do for you, period. Like, if this person's qualified, they should get the job, no matter what the race is, no matter what, just give them a shot. And I'm really, really trying to help push that.
It's been interesting in this last 11 years navigating this space as a entrepreneur and going through the many processes in which I've like absorbed racism and like arriving to these moments in which we're having these conversations. One of the things I just think about is just the time lost and all the opportunities missed because of preconceived notions that I have no control over when people look at me or people that look like me, right? And it's sort of opened this little door in my heart that's filled with like anger and hurt and just like what Arabian Prince was saying, like walking, like being qualified, being overly qualified, but then being overlooked because of something that you were born with. And you can't undo that. You can work so hard. You can be so talented. You can do all the things that you're supposed to, follow all the directions and be excellent. But then you have to deal with a preconceived notion about race and gender that'll completely dismantle a trajectory for a career. And then you have to think about the generations of individuals that have had to endure that. And like, where do we even grow trust to move forward? Like believing that people are really actually serious about dismantling racism. It like I want to trust that we're going to progress to positive change. But like I have a friend who's a musician and I have her work with me and she's an amazing Black artist, but she doesn't fit a very Black rapper category. She sings, she raps, and she likes rock music. She's in several different genres, but the only time she ever even gets success is if she's doing rap or if she's doing something that looks hip hop or Black. And that's the only time that she can like progress through the door in any meaningful manner. So like everything that he was just saying was just like kind of in a very new way for me, triggering. And that's crazy, right? Like I never thought about it because I existed in a world where I just dealt with the fact that no matter how excellent I am, I'm always going to have to wait in line behind people that are much less qualified than me. And like, what do you do with that for years? And like, how can I help the next generation of individuals that come after this moment, after 2020? And it's, that's what the jumping out of my seat was. It's just the emotional impact of this conversation is very deep. To like have your creativity appropriated, but not be compensated or acknowledged for generations is just, it makes me kind of sick. Like, what do we do with that? Like, like Arabian Prince was saying, it's just like, it's not even, we can't even really start at like, the racist part. We have to start at socialization and education of our communities of people of color so they can be exposed to the opportunities they can get in the first place. Like I talk to, young kids all the time and they don't even consider the fact that the music that they want to do is also a component that can be added to a technological product. Anyways, I'm gonna get off my soapbox because I know Tariq got something to say.
Yeah, it's education on that level. There's also education on the corporate and companies and people in those spaces who are being, to be honest, lazy. It's great to write a check, but if you're not willing to put yourself in uncomfortable situation, uncomfortable conversation, and actually talk to people, instead of painting a broad stroke of what Black people are, which I see a lot of in music, tech space, gaming space, that's not going to change. For example, I had a conversation with a program director at a radio station, not to be named, about how come you don't have more Black people working at your station? Like he goes, it's hard to find them. Like, that's just lazy. That's just pure, utter lazy. I did a game festival. I found all these amazing people because I did the work, right? If companies are serious, you have to do the work. You have to go out and be wanting to do this. You have the will. Like I look at our city and I made a comment about our city, Milwaukee, is like, They got the Bucks, they got the Deer District, they got the DNC. They did the work, but our city's known as the most segregated, one of the worst places for Black people. They don't want to do the work. They want to push it on the rug, talk about their cool little restaurants, until the companies and people behind the scene really want to change. They have to change themselves internally, have to educate themselves. You can't keep asking like people out there in communities, like, what should I do every time that George Floyd happens? You know, was it, who said it? Some comedian, Kamal Bell, if you want Black people educated, treat them like a college, pay them to educate you. Then if you don't can, if you want to know more. But I just feel there's a laziness going on. And I feel like people want to, hopefully I feel certain companies want to do their thing and just wait and buy their time because they know last time it happened, it took 2 months, it goes away and we can go back to normal business. Yeah, to me, it's just, honestly, the industry has to have a will and a serious will to change their internal thing. They can do all the external conversations and all that till they look at their board, till they look at how they make their products, how they design their user interface. All that has to be considered. So that's where I stand on it.
Just going to say that how we have to do it, like us, I mean, we have to put our foot on the gas and go to these companies like I'm doing with my partners, like the Microsofts and the Intels. I'm going at them like, hey, this is what we need to do. This is how we need to do it. And here's the crazy thing. So I'll often tell people this. It's a quick story and hopefully it doesn't bore anybody here. Two things. One, I've been getting pulled over by the police since I was like 13 years old. I went to Catholic school. I used to wear like salt and pepper pants and a red tie and a green sweater. I mean, that was a uniform from Catholic school. And I was getting pulled over by the police then. So I know that there's racism, right? And I think I've been pulled over maybe more than 200 times in my life and only gotten one ticket. So that should tell you something. But my point is this. If we're going to do it, we've got to get these companies to understand that they need to work with people who understand instead of just trying to figure it out. Like most of the companies say, oh, well, we hired an agency that's going to take on this initiative for us. And we give them a bunch of money and then they go out and do something and they make a video that shows us working with a bunch of people of color and Black people. And now we got a video that showed that we did something for some kids. And that's it. It's done. Like there's nothing else after that until maybe the next year. So what I've been trying to do is, like I said, work with these companies and bringing these kids in, bringing these people in to show them what jobs there are. Like, hey, let's go to Microsoft, walk around Microsoft and see all of the jobs. Let's go to Google and see all the hundreds of jobs that are there that you can learn, that you can study for, that you can pick up and maybe go work for them. And I think that's part of the play. And the second part of the play is this. We as a Black community cannot be or stay segregated, because something I'm seeing that's kind of dangerous for us is, okay, let's do the Black this center, and it's only Black kids in that center. That's positive, but it's negative, because we need white people in there with the Black people so they can stop being racist, and they can see that the Black people are just as smart as the white people, and then the Black people can learn something from the white people, and the white people can learn something from the Black people. You know what I'm saying? You got to kind of make it so that we're just people. At the end of the day, we're all just trying to be people. So we need to segregate on certain things, but then we need to kind of bring other people in to show that we aren't the boogeyman. We aren't like, I'm not scary. I'm just as smart as you. I can do the same things that you can do. I'm just a person. When you strip everything away, I'm a person just like you. So we got a long way to go, but it's everybody in this room who has some influence. If we all kind of chip away at one little bit of influence to the companies that we know or the people we know, we can get this done.
Um, Pretty sure there is a lot. I mean, I've been focused mainly on the representation part because I feel like that does a lot for people. Just to give you an example, like I told you last week in a conversation, like I used to play tennis when I was a kid. Only Black player was Arthur Ashe, and I remember getting making fun of, and like, why is this Black kid playing tennis? And all of a sudden, you fast forward, you see Serena and Venus take over and win. Now it's normal. Now, like young Black girls, it's normal for a young Black girl to play tennis. And now you see others coming into that sport and dominating that sport. And I truly believe in the power of that. And I really, at my core, seeing that can do a lot of good to have. It's kind of like what Arabian said. We got to show these young kids the opportunities out there to see that, hey, dude, Arabian, like when I brought Arabian from Milwaukee, people were like, oh, Arabian does gaming, Arabian does this, that is, they were like blown away. They know that there's opportunities beyond just hip hop and basketball and all this kind of stuff. And I truly believe that is my passion, to make sure that our youth sees what's out there. Because as my experience in tech, it's because my parents scraped and saved for a computer for me. I learned programming at age 10. My mom saw I was passionate about it, sent me a computer science camp, programming camp in South Carolina in 1984. And all the opportunities I've gotten in my life because of that experience. And I want to make sure I was exposed to that allowed me to be where I am today. And I want to make sure that people that look like me are exposed to that. So I could say there's plenty of other categories, but this to me is crucial for our youth, crucial for people that look like me to have those opportunities and get that exposure.
I think that this generation of, Generation Z, young millennials have so much power in how they use technology. So I think that it's just gotta be super uncool to do it any other way. Like we have to like build it into our culture in general so that, when we're sharing music, when we're thinking that something's cool, we're not also diminishing a culture. We're not appropriating a culture and then, like cheapening it by not acknowledging or paying the people that create these things. So I think that, with technology, with the whole ways that all the ways that we can link, all the ways that we can engage, that the way we use these platforms are really going to, in my opinion, make a significant difference. Because it's my hope that with all these digital conversations, with everyone becoming a lot more introspective about who they want to be as a human and who they want to be as a person, um, that people are going to be a lot more accountable to that. We're going to hold everyone accountable. And I think that if younger people start holding themselves and their friends accountable for what it means to be anti-racist, for what it means to really respect Black artists, not just, it's cool and it's fun, but understand it's hard work to make music. It's hard work to be a creative. It's hard work to get yourself out there, and not just sort of dismissing it, but having a bigger conversation about what's consumed. Um, I'm hoping that technology really kind of speeds that process up for us, so we don't have to wait, several more decades to really see the change that needs to happen.
I guess a good example, I don't know what would happen, is BMG. Of all the statements from music industry, which I felt kind of deaf ears, BMG put out a statement that we're going to review our contracts. Now, I don't know what exactly it means, but they really decided we're going to look at our history and what we've done and how we got here, and did we do it fairly? And I'm surprised that BMG is the only group that even mentioned that. Where's Atlantic? Where's Universal Group? That has made tons and tons of money off of artists like Beyonce and all that. Not look at their past contracts and reevaluate them. Being honest about your industry and what you've done in your industry sector. Like, as I said, Fortnite is a good example. Riot Games is a great example of this statement. We're going to give money, but internally they have C-suite people saying racist stuff, right? I think the first step is to look in the mirror at your organization as a leader and like, how do we handle business? Are we being fair? I think that is the biggest action I think companies need to do before anybody really truly takes them serious, because these kids can see through it. They can see BS and they call out BS, right? And companies think they can get away this time. I don't think these kids are going to let them get away this time. I mean, Starbucks is a great example. Like, oh, we're going to have pride stickers, pride. Oh, but we're not going to have Black Lives Matters. I'm like, then you had this whole thing about the person getting arrested in your store. You had all these videos made for diversity training. Did you pull that stunt? There's an internal problem at Starbucks. They put out external, all this stuff, what they're going to do, conversation about race, but internally, they haven't changed. I mean, so I think that is the first action. It's sort of like, you got to look in your mirror. It's sort of like health, right? Like, I'm going, my health is like, I can try to help people, but if I'm sick or I have problems, I can't do anything about externally. So those companies really need to take it seriously.
I would like to add one more thing. I think that, just with everything that Tariq said, that if it costs companies money on their bottom line to do racist things in a significant way, then they wouldn't. Like, it can't just be like this kumbaya, I want to be a good person and feel good about myself. It has to cost. It has to have a significant cost. And that's where I think, like, technology and the youth and like how quickly this information gets out so we can stop buying products from these companies that do racist things. Like, yeah, we Starbucks pulled a stunt, but are we stopping their bottom line? Is the bottom line being diminished? Riot, they pulled their stunt, but are people stopping as it pertains to playing League of Legends and talking about it and so on and so forth? Like it needs to hurt in a way that is fiscal, because it seems like that's how most companies are motivated. I don't know about these gentlemen, but for me, it's just too soon to tell. I'm not ready to get my hopes up. So I know it sounds like tough, but that's just me. So
Well, for me, what I tell people, and cover your ears if you're Christian, when we did Fuck the Police with NWA over 30 years ago, ain't nobody listened to us until now. Like, this was over 30 years ago we was talking about this. And even going back to the 60s and the 50s and the 40s, and 400 years, people been talking about this, yelling and screaming, and you know what I'm saying? And just right now, like, oh, so I don't have my hopes up, because I could see this, like I said, us as humans, just like we forgot about COVID. COVID ain't gone away. It's going up. It's still here. People walk around like, oh, there's no pandemic. And in a month from now, people will be walking around like this never happened too. So we gotta stay on it. And trust me, I'm staying on it. I'm going to these companies and I'm like, all that money that you like putting out there and your advertising, look what we did. I don't want the look what we did money. I want the money that you're doing, and let's go and give it to some inner city schools. Let's go give it to some inner city organization. Let's go give it to the small nonprofits that can't get the money, because I saw a number. I think the top 5% of nonprofits get all the money. Like 95% of the money goes to the top 5%. The March of Dimes, like, Easter Seals, all these huge companies. And they use 20, 30, 40% of that money just to fund their companies. So the companies that are really out there doing the work and really trying to help these communities are getting no money. And that's got to change as well.
On that note, I have to say, like, I had a joke. We have a joke going, like a pool. Like, so when people get back to their sourdough recipes on Facebook, and I'm basically, I've told our station, I call a leadership meeting, like, we need to address this, have a vision, as our station's doing the work, but we want to have a cohesive mission. And I basically said, like, we can take time to do this, but when we can come out with a statement, we haven't forgotten. We're going to make sure that you haven't forgotten. But yeah, like, I'm not holding my breath. I know some people like optimistic, but I'm like, yeah, I've been there before. I've been in marches, I've been in protests, I've been in sit-ins, I did all this stuff, and I'm like, it's something different, and that's maybe because of technology, right? Like, I think the social media has made these protests more effective, but I don't know. I mean, I feel like some of these companies are just sitting by like, yeah, I know this lasts about 8 weeks. We can get back to normal again. So I don't know.
Hi, yeah, thanks. Thank you so much for putting this on. I'm so glad I'm attending because I almost didn't because my schedule felt so busy, but it's nice to be part of a conversation on a larger platform. I work for a nonprofit in Denver called Youth on Record, and we're having these conversations every day. We work with students ages 11 to 24 all around music. And so my question is, for our older group, you know, the 18 to 24 young people, what advice would you give them in moving into this music and tech world, especially if they're not pursuing a 4-year degree? And Arabian, I love that you work with with companies to bring young people in. And so I definitely am going to look at who is in the Denver area to open up those doors that way. But I just wanted to see if you all had any other advice.
Well, I'll start first, if you don't mind. Yeah. So Denver, I have family in Denver, in Inglewood and Cherry Creek and, Denver, Colorado. So I could actually help you with the companies in Denver because I do a lot of stuff up there as well. But that's the key is, one thing we didn't mention is, especially in the inner cities and the Black communities, a lot of these kids aren't going to go to college. They weren't raised to go to college. They weren't bred to go to college. So you got to kind of figure out, how can you get them a career now? Like, what can you do to help them get their career started, whether it's in music? And I often say this, less than 1% of the population in any field is ever going to excel, whether it's sports, whether it's going to be music, whether it's being an actor. Everybody wants to be something, but less than 1% are going to be the pros that actually have a successful career. You can have a living, but what we got to do is teach that guy who wants to be the next, I'm just going to say Chris Brown or Beyonce or whoever, that it may not work out for you, but here's 35 other things you can do in the music business that you can have a successful career. And I think that's the key, is to talk to the people that you're dealing with now and the students and let them know that it may or may not work for you in this, but don't give up your hopes. If you love music, go and be a manager, be an agent, get into soundtracks and, doing stuff for film and television or whatever. There's so many other things to do. So you got to kind of like open it up to the whole possibility. And that's what I think.
Thank you. Yeah, we are having those conversations in the traditional management label, but the tech is kind of, I've been attending these, but this just opened my eyes, and we need to create a funnel and a channel that way for our youth also. Because I agree with everything you just said. So thank you.
Reach out and we'd love to help.
The other thing is important to give the kids an opportunity to do like hands-on experience, to get their hands dirty in these various fields. I hosted a team game jam with the library last year, where I worked with a local group, Milltown Game Developers, where the kids love video games, got a chance to learn about coding, learn about storytelling, learn about making beats. And at the end of the 2 days, they made a game, presented to their family and friends, and then the Milwaukee Bucks esports team gave away prizes. So they got to understand all the parts in making a video game. But more importantly, they got to work as a team to develop, take an idea they had in their head into an actual reality. And they learned all these different skills. Understand, oh, this is what a green screen is. Oh, this is what a digital SLR is. Oh, I didn't know what coding does that. Oh, that's how you make beats. And they put it all together for one on a package. And those kids were just beaming like amazing. Their family it was just an amazing sight to see. And I think, give them tours, but they know there's programs out there that gives them opportunity to actually get their hands dirty. I think it's one thing to show them, which is great. The other thing is to let them get their hands dirty. It's also very valuable.
With my kids, I teach them accountability, because these young people they live in an information age. We're constantly having to learn new things. So essentially the approach that I use is teaching kids how to learn and making them accountable to that process always. So if you have a smartphone in your hand, and you're not constantly Googling information on how you can be the best at whatever it is that you want to do, you're messing up. And I let kids know that. And that might sound harsh, but I think that it's incredibly important to prepare them for what they have to move forward, onto. Like, Arabian was saying, like, it's so few people that can excel at things in a huge way. So kids need to inform themselves, young adults need to inform themselves. Like, there's no like hand holding anymore. And the 4-year university is nice and everything, but not really required in this particular space.
Yeah, thanks for letting me grab this time here, Dimitri. Earlier you said that everybody, all of our guests here have some programs and initiatives that they have either founded or support that are really creating change. I just want to know where I can go to find out about those, because I'd like to be able to be a resource of any way if I can, and just support.
I'm still like organizing my initiatives, but if you just my websites are www.gokeisha.com and sugargamers.com, where we're putting what we're going to do next. So I used to teach a class, a summer school called Intro to Futurism, and with everything going on this year, I am not in the schools, obviously. So my next initiative is to figure out a digital strategy in order to still, engage the students in the way that I did. I teach using the Socratic method, so it's a little bit harder when you can't like see them and see the body language and pick up on like when these kids are kind of falling off. So I've just been trying to reconfigure that, but yeah. But thank you. All those things.
And then Dimitri just posted it. You can learn more about 889 Labs and what we have done at radiomilwaukee.org/labs. And just like Keisha, I put together a proposal called COVID-19 and Beyond, because we had to pivot some of our programming, which is a lot of the programming is in person. So we're working on doing some interesting events and launching a podcast series and interview series, and doing hosting virtual pitches for underrepresented startups. I've been just building my connections up with people like Harlem Capital, Collab Capital, who are kind of the Black VCs around the country, to talk to the local startups here. So those are some of the things I am working on in this pandemic.
Yeah, and for me, it's just www.innovatenext.com, and it's INOV, the number 8, and next.com. And, basically my mission and my company's mission is not only to do the things that we're doing in the communities, but we help other nonprofits and other companies. Like, that's how I met Tariq. I wanted to go out there and help them with their initiative and get their conference, to be the best it could be. And that's just my thing, is wherever I can use my weight. And I understand, because coming from NWA, that's how I get in with these CEOs, because they grew up on my music and they think I'm cool, even though I'm not cool. I'm a nerd, but they think I'm cool. So I go hang out with them and play golf, because I'm a good golfer too. So they can say, oh, I'm hanging out with NWA, and I sneak in and I can get them, to understand what's really going on. So I use that as the kind of trick to get in. So if anybody needs that help, call me up. Yeah. Well, you know what? Let me say this really quick, Dimitri. If there are questions that people want to ask, why don't you just have them send them in and have them send them to us? And I would love to even answer them offline, so that we get to everybody's question.
And that wraps up this episode of the Music Tectonics podcast. Thanks for listening. Just so you know, you were just listening to Tariq Moody from 88.9 Radio Milwaukee. Find out more about 88.9 Labs at radiomilwaukee.org/labs. You also heard from Keisha Howard. You can learn more about her at sugargamers.com. And Arabian Prince has an incubator called Innovate Next, which you can find online at innovatenext.com, but that's innovate with one N and the number 8, INOV8 next.com. Thanks for listening to Music Tectonics. Please hit subscribe on your favorite podcasting app. Come to musictectonics.com to find out about our newsletter. If you sign up, you will find out about our weekly Websdays, which we do each Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern, usually. And it includes usually a shorter panel with a chance for networking where you can actually meet other folks in the music tech space, connect with other innovators, whether you're in lockdown or hiding behind a mask, you still get a chance to get business done with other innovators. So thanks so much for listening.
You're listening to Music Tectonics.